My name is Aria Vance, and I am 31 years old. Tonight, I am standing on the 100th floor observation deck of the Vance Spire, a structure that dominates the Seattle skyline like a jagged, obsidian needle piercing the perpetual, oppressive gray of the Pacific Northwest. To the world outside, this tower is marketed as the absolute pinnacle of human achievement, a hyper-modern monument of reinforced glass, carbon fiber, and smart city integration that supposedly breathes in perfect synchronicity with the rhythm of the city. But to me, as the wind howls against the exterior aerodynamic panels with a low, mournful frequency that vibrates in my very marrow, it feels like nothing more than a vertical tomb built of vanity and stolen labor. The air up here is pressurized and sterile, filtered through a dozen high-tech scrubbers until it tastes like absolute, chilling nothingness. Yet, it is heavy, suffocating, even with the overlapping, cloying scents of vintage champagne that costs more than my annual rent, expensive Cuban cigar smoke that clings to the velvet curtains, and the sharp, metallic tang of the rain lashing against the 1-0-inch-thick reinforced windows. I can hear the building breathe, the subtle, rhythmic groan of the mass timber dampening system deep in the core, a system I spent 3 grueling years of my life perfecting in the silence of the sub-basement. Every creak is a reminder of a calculation I made, a soul-crushing effort that no one in this room will ever acknowledge. Below me, Seattle is a sprawling, chaotic carpet of flickering amber and neon lights, a city I have spent my entire adult life trying to protect through invisible lines of structural engineering and dynamic code. I look down at the Pike Place Market, a tiny cluster of lights, and realize that if my dampening algorithms failed for even a second, the centrifugal force at this height would turn this gala into a scene of carnage. But inside this ballroom, the light is blinding, aggressive, and fundamentally fraudulent. Tens of thousands of Swarovski crystals hang from the vaulted ceiling, vibrating in subtle resonance with every low-frequency bass note from the string quartet. They cast jagged, prismatic shards across the floor, dancing like shattered ghosts under the feet of the elite. They look like the shards of my own life broken, sharp, and cast aside by the very man who built this stage. I see Senator Graham laughing with a Silicon Valley VC, their faces flushed with expensive Pinot Noir, oblivious to the fact that they are standing on 400,000 tons of steel held together by my ghost code. Among the 200 senators, tech moguls, and cold-eyed socialites, this tower is a miracle. They call it the breathable spire, a self-sustaining ecosystem designed to withstand even a magnitude 9 earthquake without shedding a single pane of glass. They raise their gold-rimmed glasses to the vision of my father, Sterling Vance. They toast to his legacy of steel and glass. But as I stand near the edge of the room, clutching a drink I haven't tasted until my fingers go numb against the cold glass, I watch my father move through the crowd like a king among peasants. He is wearing a tuxedo that costs more than a teacher's annual salary, his silver hair coiffed to perfection, his smile a practiced weapon of mass seduction. Every handshake is a calculated transaction, every laugh a strategic move on a chessboard only he can see. I know the terrifying, fragile truth. This tower is standing on a foundation of stolen genius and calculated, cold-blooded silence. Every structural weld, every line of the structural OS, every safety buffer, it wasn't Sterling's vision, it was my obsession. I was the one who solved the harmonic resonance issue that almost brought the cranes down during construction. I was the one who rewrote the seismic protocols when the consultants said it was impossible. I was the one who spent nights staring at stress-strain curves until my eyes bled. I lived on black coffee and adrenaline, buried under mountains of blueprints, while Julian was out being the face of a brand he didn't understand. And tonight, he is using my soul as currency to buy the adoration of the world's most powerful people. He is selling the Vance name while erasing the Vance daughter. Sterling Vance stands on the obsidian stage at the center of the hall. Under the intense white spotlights, his silver hair gleams with a metallic sheen, sharp as a blade. He looks out over the crowd with the absolute, terrifying certainty of a man who believes he owns the horizon. When his gaze happens to flicker toward me for a microsecond, he doesn't see a daughter who spent 4 years perfecting the Spire's complex algorithms while surviving on black coffee and adrenaline. He doesn't see the PhD in structural dynamics that I earned while working 3 jobs to avoid his conditional financial support. He sees a CAD monkey, a nameless, replaceable technician, who should be eternally grateful for the scraps he deigns to throw from his mahogany table. I can feel the cold sweat itching at the base of my neck, my pulse drumming a frantic, uneven rhythm against my collarbone. I spent a month's rent on this emerald silk gown. A desperate, fading flicker of hope that tonight, for the first time, he would finally introduce me as his lead structural engineer. I wanted him to tell the world that his daughter was the one who made this tower survive the 100 mile per hour winds of the sound. Instead, I am the girl who helps with the IT and the server maintenance. Sterling taps a platinum ring against his crystal flute. The sound is sharp, high-pitched, cutting through the laughter and the music like a razor through silk. The room falls into a sudden, pressurized silence. You could hear a pin drop on the marble. Friends, visionaries, fellow builders of tomorrow, Sterling begins, his voice a rich, authoritative baritone that commands the very oxygen in the room. The Vance Spire is a testament to the unyielding strength of the Vance name. We build for the future. We build to last. But even the strongest carbon fiber can be weakened by a microscopic, hidden flaw. And today, it is with a shattered heart that I must expose a systemic flaw within my own bloodline. He turns his head slowly, and his eyes lock onto mine. They are not the eyes of a father. They are the cold, gray, unfeeling sensors of a security machine. My daughter, Aria, has been caught in a web of inexcusable greed. She attempted to sell the Spire's core operating protocols, the very soul and security of this building, to our competitors in Neo-Tokyo. She tried to sabotage the tower that bears her name for 30 pieces of silver. I feel the blood vanish from my limbs, a terrifying coldness sweeping from my toes to my chest. My knees buckle, and I have to grab the edge of a catering table, my knuckles turning white, to keep from collapsing. The room begins to spin in a nauseating blur of emerald silk and black tuxedos. Every person in that room, people I have known since I was a child, people who called themselves my mentors, turns on me with a collective, razor-edged disgust. In an instant, I am no longer a Vance. I am an infection to be purged. Beside my father stands my brother, Julian. He is 34, wearing a bespoke tuxedo that costs more than a mid-sized car. He is adjusting his $120,000 tourbillon watch. Julian is the face of the firm, the visionary who gives the TED Talks, the man who couldn't calculate a load-bearing stress if his life depended on it. He knows he's the one who leaked the data to cover his massive gambling debts in the underground Neo-Tokyo circuits. He knows I'm the only one who discovered his digital trail. And he knows that tonight, with the help of our father's calculated betrayal, he has won. Therefore, Sterling booms, his voice now trembling with a masterful performance of grief that would shame a Greek tragedy. I will not let the Vance name be tarnished by a parasite. I ask you all to bear witness to this cleansing. Who agrees that Aria Vance is stripped of her name, her inheritance, and her place in this city? Who agrees she is banished from the Vance Spire and from the Vance family, forever? Hands begin to rise. It is a slow, rhythmic, terrifying tide of rejection. 1, 20, 100, 200. The betrayal is total and absolute. I look at my mother, Eleanor. She has spent her entire life as a trophy, a silent, beautiful partner in Sterling's ego. She looks at me now, her eyes wet with a cowardly, hollow pity. She looks away, unable to meet my gaze, and then she slowly, agonizingly, raises her hand too. That is the moment the floor feels like it truly gives way. The betrayal smells of rain, ozone, and the bitter, metallic copper of my own blood as I bite my lip to keep from screaming. You've been a ghost in this house for 30 years, Aria, my father says, his voice now flat, clinical, and final. Now, the ghost is exorcised. Leave. You are nothing to us. You are a void. To understand how I became a ghost in a tower made of light, you have to understand the Vance household. We didn't live in a home. We lived in a cold, high-gloss showroom for Sterling's ambition. Growing up, Vance meant learning that love was a performance. And performance was everything. The walls of our estate were lined with Italian marble, but the temperature was always freezing. I remember the family dinners, where we sat at a mahogany table that could seat 30, yet the silence was so loud it made my ears ring. Sterling would talk about market share and vertical integration as if they were members of the family, while Julian would boast about his latest social conquest. I sat at the far end, a footnote in their grand narrative, watching the way the light caught the dust motes in the air. Julian would get a standing ovation for a C- in history, while my 100% on a physics final was met with a request to pass the salt. Julian is 3 years older than me. From the second he could hold a plastic block, my father declared him the architect of the new age. Julian was the son, the golden boy who could do no wrong, even when he failed his basic physics exams. He had the charisma of a cult leader and the technical depth of a shallow, sun-dried puddle. My father turned the entire east wing of our estate into a gallery for Julian. Every mediocre sketch, every concept he had a ghostwriter draw for him, was framed in gold and lit by professional gallery spotlights. Julian was encouraged to be loud, to be bold, to be visionary. There was no room left for me in the light. I was the shadow that made his shine possible. And me? I was the girl who spent her teens in the university libraries, obsessed with the cold, hard logic of structural dynamics and AI integration. I graduated at the top of my class at MIT, while my father was telling the socialite circles that I was taking a gap year to find myself because he was embarrassed by my unfeminine obsession with steel. I finished my PhD in 3 years, living on cold ramen and sleeping on the floor of the lab because my father cut off my tuition halfway through, calling my pursuit of theoretical math a vanity project that contributes nothing to the Vance global bottom line. I learned to solder my own circuits, to write my own compilers, and to treat exhaustion as a friend. I remember the day I brought home my doctoral thesis, the groundbreaking work on self-healing smart foundations, a technology that could literally save thousands of lives in an earthquake. I handed it to him, in his mahogany-paneled study, my heart pounding against my ribs with a hope I hadn't yet let die. I thought, surely this is enough. Surely, he can finally see the value in me. The study smelled of old books and expensive tobacco. Sterling was sitting behind a desk carved from a single piece of ancient oak. He didn't even put down his cigar. He didn't even look at the abstract or the glowing recommendation from the dean. He glanced at the title, let out a puff of acrid blue smoke, and set his scalding mug of black coffee directly on the center of the cover page. I watched in agonizing slow motion as the dark brown ring of liquid seeped through the thick, expensive paper, blurring the complex, elegant equations I had spent 3 years of my life perfecting. The heat from the mug seemed to sear my own skin. He looked up, his eyes bored and dismissive, and said, "Structural dynamics? What are you going to do, Aria? Tell the wind to stop blowing? We are builders, not dreamers. Go to the sub-basement. Julian's CAD team needs someone to double-check the bolt counts for the spire. Don't speak unless you're asked to fix a server or clear a paper jam." That was the day I officially became a ghost. My kingdom was the sub-basement of the Vance Spire, 3 floors below the street level, where the vibration of the city was a constant, low-frequency hum in my teeth. It smelled of ozone, industrial coolant, and the sterile, dry heat of the server racks. I assembled my own workstation from discarded parts I found in the company's obsolete bin, overclocking the processors until they glowed. Just to run the simulations, the Spire actually needed to survive the Pacific Northwest winters. I became a creature of the dark, my eyes adjusting to the flicker of monitors while the rest of the world basked in the glass and chrome above. While the rest of the world looked at Sterling and Julian on the covers of Architectural Digest, I was living in a windowless bunker. I was the one who actually designed the Spire's seismic core. I was the one who wrote the Adaptive Airflow OS, a complex AI that adjusted the building's skin in real time to keep the tower from swaying in a gale. I was the one who stayed up for 48 hours straight when the wind hit 90 knots during construction, manually balancing the dampers because Julian had forgotten to calibrate them. Sterling never once came down to the sub-basement. He never saw the 10,000 lines of code I wrote to fix the catastrophic design flaws in Julian's aesthetic crown. To him, I was just the CAD monkey. Julian would laugh during board meetings, leaning back in his leather chair, and say, "Aria's great at the boring stuff, the math, the wires, the janitorial work of engineering. But she lacks the vision of a true Vance. She's a tool, not an architect." Last New Year's Eve, as the family toasted with $500 a bottle champagne in the penthouse, Julian smirked at me over his crystal flute. "Aria, you look like a cavefish. When was the last time you saw a sun that wasn't on a monitor? You should hack yourself a life, or at least a better dress. You're bringing down the aesthetic of the room." I just sipped my mineral water and looked out at the horizon. I knew something they didn't. I knew that Julian's aesthetic design for the Spire's upper crown was structurally unstable. I knew that without my hidden vibration ghost code, a secret script I had written to stabilize the tower's dampers, the Spire would literally shake itself apart in a 50-mile-per-hour wind. I was the only thing keeping them from falling into the sea. I was the foundation they pretended didn't exist. The first storm arrived 3 years ago, at exactly 2:14 a.m. It wasn't a weather storm. It was a digital one that threatened to bankrupt the Vance empire in a single night. The Vance Spire's Smart City OS, the brain that controlled everything from the elevators to the life support systems, was hit by what the industry calls a logic bomb. It wasn't an external hack from Neo Tokyo or a rival firm. It was a total internal collapse born of sheer incompetence. A faulty, unvetted update, pushed through by Julian because he wanted to simplify the user interface for a marketing demo the next morning, had accidentally deleted the Spire's central gravity stabilization protocols. In an instant, the world's tallest building became a billion-dollar, glass-encased pendulum. I was in my sub-basement bunk, a small cot tucked between two server racks, when the building groaned a sound so deep, so primal, it felt like the earth itself was screaming in pain. The foundations, anchored deep into the Seattle bedrock, shuddered. The monitors on my walls started flashing blood red. The spire was leaning. 4 degrees. 6 degrees. Anything beyond 10 degrees, and the structural tension would reach the breaking point, snapping the carbon fiber supports like dry twigs. I could hear the screech of metal against metal as the secondary dampers tried to engage. Panic erupted throughout the tower. I could hear the sirens of the fire department from the street above, a tiny, distant wail. Sterling was at a gala in London, but Julian was in the penthouse. I watched on the internal security cameras as he curled into a shivering ball on his designer rug, sobbing, his face buried in a $10,000 throw pillow, unable to even remember his own system password. He was the visionary, but he was currently paralyzed by the very reality he claimed to master. He was useless. My mother, Eleanor, came down to the sub-basement. She looked terrified, her diamonds clashing against her pale, trembling skin. She had never stepped foot in my domain before. She looked at the wires and the glowing screens with disgust and fear. "Aria, you have to fix it. The building is moving. Your father, his heart won't take the scandal. Everything we own, our name, our fortune is tied to this spire." I looked at her, my fingers already flying across the keyboard at 100 words per minute. The code was scrolling past so fast it was a blur of neon green. "I can stabilize the tower. Mom, I've already found the corrupted sector, but I have to override Julian's account. I have to show the board that he pushed the update without testing. I have to tell the truth." She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate, her fingernails digging into my skin. "You must save the building, but you must let Julian take the credit. If the world knows he caused this, the Vance stock will hit zero by sunrise. We will be paupers. Your father will never forgive you for destroying his son's reputation. Do it quietly. Be the ghost. If you love us, you'll let him be the hero." That was the knife in the heart. My own mother was asking me to lobotomize my own success, to hand my genius over to a fraud who had spent his life mocking me, just so they could keep their champagne and their silk. She didn't care about my 4 gigapascals or my 3 years of sleepless nights. She only cared about the Vance brand. She wanted to preserve a lie at the cost of my soul. And, because I was still desperate for a scrap of their love, I did it. I stayed up for 72 hours, rewiring the entire logic core of the spire while the building swayed 12 feet in either direction above me. My head was pounding, my eyes were dry and burning, but I didn't stop. And then, I sent the fix to Julian's terminal so he could hit the enter key and look like a savior. The next morning, the news reported that Julian Vance had narrowly averted a global catastrophe with a brilliant, last-minute system override. Sterling gave him a $5 million bonus and a private island in the Caribbean. I received a text from Julian while I was eating a bowl of cold cereal in the dark. "Thanks for the save, Cad Monkey. Now get back to the basement and stay there. If you ever tell a soul, I'll make sure you never work in this city again." But Julian, in his infinite, arrogant stupidity, didn't realize that as a structural dynamist and a coder, I don't just fix things. I build audit trails. Every line of code I wrote to save the spire was digitally watermarked. Every time Julian accessed the core from that day on, my private, hidden server in the sub-basement recorded the truth. Every time he stole money from the safety budget to pay his gambling debts, I logged it. I wasn't just fixing a building. I was documenting an execution. I was a ghost. Yes, but a ghost who was keeping the receipts. I was the silent witness to their slow, greedy suicide. Back to the gala. Back to the 100th floor. The silence is deafening, heavy with the weight of my father's public rejection. Sterling has just called me nothing. He has just told the most powerful people in the world that I am a thief. Julian is smirking, already imagining how he'll spend my share of the inheritance. The crowd is waiting for me to be dragged out by security like common trash. I can see the security guards moving toward me, their faces grim, their hands hovering near their radios. And then the high-speed elevators chime with a melodic, haunting tone that cuts through the silence. The heavy, gold-leaf doors slide open with a hiss of pneumatic pressure. A man no one has seen in 12 years walks out. His footsteps are heavy, rhythmic, and terrifying, clanking against the marble floor with the weight of an incoming storm. He is wearing a worn tactical jacket, his face a map of scars and survival. He looks like he belongs in a war zone, not a ballroom. He is carrying a matte black, biometric-locked briefcase. Uncle Silas. The man my father framed for structural negligence a decade ago to cover up a massive budget cut, the man who was actually the real brains behind the Vance Spire's original blueprints before I took over. He doesn't look at the shocked crowd. He doesn't look at Sterling. He looks only at me. "The wind is picking up, Aria," he says, his voice a low, gravelly growl that cuts through the ballroom like a chainsaw. And this spire is about to scream the truth. Silas walks to the main podium and plugs in the tablet, the massive 360-degree LED screen that wraps around the entire ballroom, the screen currently showing Julian's Visionary Design Award, and a montage of his faked blueprints suddenly flickers to black. Then, a single line of bright, emerald green code begins to scroll across the room, reflected in the expensive champagne glasses of the billionaires. "Everyone in this room!" Silas roars, his voice amplified by the Spire's internal sound system that I had hijacked 5 minutes prior. He barely knows how to use a calculator. He is a parasite, feeding on the genius of the woman you just tried to exile. "Silas, you're a disgraced drunk!" Sterling screams, his face turning a dangerous shade of crimson. "Security! Get him out of my sight! Use force if necessary!" The security team, the men I had quietly retrained and paid through a private shell company for the last few years, don't move. They stand at attention, looking at me, not at him. They know who actually signs their checks, and who keeps the building they stand in from collapsing. They know that without the ghost architect, they are standing on a tomb. Silas presses a button. The screen displays the seismic core audit logs. The text is unmistakable, giant neon letters that everyone can see. User: Julian Vance. Action: deletion of safety buffer 07. Reason: visual aesthetic conflict. Author of override: Aria Vance. Status: critical stability secured by the void architect. A horrified, collective gasp ripples through the room. Billionaires who own the multi-million-dollar penthouses look at the ceiling as if it's about to fall. The senators whisper in panicked tones about safety violations and public endangerment. Julian looks like he's about to faint, his skin the color of ash. "It's a fake! She's a hacker! She's framing me!" He lunges for the tablet, but Silas catches him by the lapels and shoves him into a table of expensive hors d'oeuvres. The $10,000 appetizers go flying, scattering like the fragments of Julian's reputation. Then, the final blow. Silas plays the recording from 3 years ago. It's the voice of our mother, Eleanor, sobbing in the sub-basement. "Aria, you must let Julian take the credit. Your father can't stand the thought of being outdone by his daughter. Please. Be the ghost for us." The room goes cold. Sterling looks at Eleanor. Eleanor covers her face and weeps. The legacy of Sterling Vance has just been exposed as a house of cards built on the back of the daughter he tried to erase. The silence that follows is more powerful than any architect's blueprint. "And now," Silas says, "look at the digital signature on every structural weld in this tower." The screen zooms in on the cryptographic seal of the Spire's OS. It isn't the Vance Global logo. It's a custom-designed icon of a ghost holding a compass. Below it, the text, designed and secured by Dr. Aria Vance, P.E., the Void Architect. "I didn't steal your legacy, Father," I say. Stepping onto the stage, my emerald dress glowing under the spotlights. "I am the only reason this tower hasn't collapsed into the Puget Sound. You wanted a prince, so you ignored the person who was actually keeping the roof over your head. Well, the prince is a fraud. And the architect is finished being a ghost. I am the void that is about to swallow your pride. The FBI agents I had alerted months ago step out from the crowd. They don't go for Silas. They go for Julian. Julian Vance, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, grand larceny, and structural endangerment. The fallout was a slow, agonizing slide into a dark, pressurized oblivion. That night, the Vance Spire, which should have been a crowning achievement, became a federal crime scene. While the elite fled the ballroom like rats abandoning a gilded ship, I watched from the shadows of the observation deck mezzanine as Julian was hauled out in front of a literal wall of paparazzi. The flashing strobe lights caught the mocking glint of his $120,000 watch. He screamed my name, calling me a traitor, but the wind swallowed his voice before it could reach me. By Monday morning, Vance Global Infrastructure's stock had crashed and been delisted. The FBI descended on the Vance headquarters like vultures picking at a carcass. They carted away boxes of mahogany-stained documents and hard drives that I had already remotely decrypted for them. Every award Julian had ever won, every honorary degree my father had purchased, every architectural citation was revoked. The Vance name became a global punchline for corruption. To pay the billions in class-action lawsuits, Sterling had to sign over every asset. I watched on the news as a crane dismantled the giant neon Vance sign from the top of the spire. The tower was renamed the Seattle Heights, and my father's name was scrubbed from the history books. The Vance estate was sold at auction. I saw the moving trucks on the news, carrying out the mahogany furniture I was never allowed to sit on during dinner parties. My father stood on the lawn, looking smaller than I had ever seen him, clutching a single box of old blueprints that were no longer worth the paper they were printed on. My mother, Eleanor, suffered a brutal transition. She had lived in a synthetic bubble of silk, denial, and social status for 30 years. Now, she was moved into a small, gray apartment in a part of the city she used to refer to as the industrial wasteland. She called me every night for 3 months. Her voice was thin, sharp, and desperate. "He's eating canned soup, Aria." "Canned soup? Mom," I said, my voice steady and cold as a structural weld. I spent 30 years being the glue for a family that viewed me as a structural flaw. I'm not the glue anymore. I'm the architect. Now you live in the wreckage. Don't call this number again. I am no longer a Vance. I am Aria, and I am free. Today, I sit in my own office on the top floor of a carbon-neutral spire I designed myself. It's called the Void Architect HQ. We don't just build skyscrapers. We build the most advanced structural security systems in the world. Systems built on the bedrock of physical truth. My name isn't on a neon sign. It doesn't need to be. My signature is in the stability of every structure I touch. On the center wall of my office, framed in hand-carved mahogany, is my PhD thesis from MIT. The dark, round coffee stain is still there, right in the center of the cover page. It reminds me that the marks people try to leave on you to diminish you don't define your capacity. That stain isn't a symbol of my father's hatred anymore. It's a trophy of my endurance. It reminds me that their approval was a ceiling I had to break through. It is a testament to the fact that you can build an empire out of the very things they used to try and bury you. 6 months ago, Sterling showed up in my lobby. He looked like he was made of ash. He sat there for 7 hours, wearing an old trench coat. When I finally went down to see him, he stood up, his legs shaky. He held out a small velvet box with the $120,000 watch. "Aria," he whispered, his voice a raspy thread. "I was wrong. Let's rebuild the Vance name together. I'll give you 51%. I'll put your name first. Aria and Sterling Vance. We can be legendary." I looked at the watch, a beautiful, cold masterpiece of gears with no pulse. It was a circle of gold that represented a cycle I had finally broken. "I don't need a watch to tell me what time it is, Father," I said, my voice echoing in the glass lobby. "And I don't need your recognition to know who I am. I've already built my own name. And unlike yours, mine isn't built on a foundation of theft. Keep the watch. Sell it. Use the money to find some dignity. The ledger is closed. There is no Vance name to rebuild. There is only the truth." I turned around and walked back to the elevators. I didn't look back at all. My future didn't have room for his regrets. I've learned a lesson that no architectural blueprint could ever teach. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the doors that you get to control. You decide who is worthy of entering your life. My name is Aria Vance. I am a structural engineer. I am an architect. And for the first time in my life, I am not a ghost haunting someone else's fragile empire. I am the one holding the keys to the city. I am the one who knows that the most important structure you will ever build is your own dignity. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this story touched you, remember, you are not a void. You are the architect of your own life. Speak up. Don't build for them. Build for yourself. The view from the top is much clearer when you aren't carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. I'm Aria. And tonight, for the first time in 31 years, I'm going to sleep soundly, because I finally know exactly where I belong.